In the tense hall, the idea of a duel tournament rang out like a thunderbolt in clear skies, drawing all eyes to the speaker. The symbol of the tournament appeared, two warriors facing off, swords crossed, signaling an honorable battle about to begin. One of the oldest nobles at the conference slowly spoke, his eyes full of concern. He recalled the era when duel tournaments symbolized honor and bravery, but now they had become playgrounds for the rich and powerful. This time's opponent, Barco, had both. The face of Lord Barco appeared, laughing loudly amid falling gold coins. With close ties to the central government and a huge loan from the Gold Bank, Barco held an absolute advantage. Who knows what kind of monstrous warrior he would summon for the battle? The silhouette of a giant warrior appeared behind the blonde noble, making him shudder. Under the harsh light, all he could see were the fierce features and blazing red eyes of the opponent they would face. A moment of silence fell over the room, sunlight streaming through the glass window, quietly stretching across the wooden floor. No one spoke, but anxiety and unease enveloped the entire atmosphere. Breaking the heavy atmosphere, Roman Dmitri stepped forward with a decisive stomp. His eyes shining brightly, he confidently declared, "I can assure you we can win." Roman's declaration silenced the room. Everyone looked at him, the man who had turned the tide in the previous battle, now once again bearing the hopes of the entire territory. The elderly noble's eyes widened, his voice trembling as he questioned, "Are you sure?" The question was not to doubt, but to cling to a fragile hope on the edge of an abyss. Roman smiled confidently. His voice was calm and steady. "As long as we believe in victory, there is no better way to end this war than a duel tournament." A knight in the room spoke up, sharing that Barco possessed a level 3 cavalryman, an extremely strong opponent. Most likely, this cavalryman would be the first card played in the tournament, causing a stir in the meeting. Amid the tense atmosphere of the conference, Roman Dmitri suddenly stood up, his voice resolute like an arrow piercing through everyone's doubts. He declared he would be the first to fight in the tournament representing Lawrence. With sharp eyes and absolute confidence in himself, Roman firmly stated, whether the opponent was an official knight of Barco or an outside mercenary, he was certain he could secure at least one victory. A nearby noble spoke up, trying to emphasize a key point. Even if Roman won one match, it would be meaningless if he lost the other two. Victory only mattered if it was an overall win. In response, that noble solemnly declared his strategy. He would send Chris, the strongest knight he trusted, to fight in the final match. Chris had once defeated a level 3 cavalryman despite being only level 2 himself, a remarkable feat. Chris appeared in blue magical light, full of fighting spirit. With innate talent and combat experience, his master was confident that Chris would be the trump card, bringing a crucial victory to Lawrence in the decisive match. Roman looked around the conference with confident eyes. He analyzed that winning 2 out of 3 matches would not only save Lawrence from destruction, but also restore its lost honor. That was the only path to survival now. As soon as he finished speaking, Roman turned to Lady Flora with determined eyes. His proactive and strong stance surprised her at the unexpected turn of the meeting. Without giving anyone more time to hesitate, Roman made a final call. He demanded that everyone make an immediate decision, a challenge that was both an order and a rallying cry for the territory's future. The immediate reaction was a sharp snap of Flora's fingers, a gesture indicating she had realized something important. Her serious expression signaled a sudden thought that could change everything. Recalling the moment before the conference, Flora remembered Roman's initial offer. At that time, he said she could ask for anything during this meeting, and now she began connecting the unspoken details. Flora looked at Roman Dmitri with skeptical eyes, as the light shining between them seemed to split their stances. A silent question arose in her mind. Was this the condition he mentioned when offering to help Lawrence? Thoughts surged in Flora's mind. She realized that what Roman wanted was to become Lawrence's representative in the life-or-death battle of the upcoming gladiator tournament, a responsibility no one dared to take lightly. With that intention, Roman not only requested the right to fight, but also implicitly demanded that Lawrence bear all political and military consequences if things got out of control. That was the hidden challenge in his proposal. In the darkness enveloping the meeting room, Flora silently acknowledged the truth. Roman Dmitri was a dangerous man, not only because of his strength, but also because of moves others could not predict. After a moment of weighing worry and trust, Flora sighed, as if releasing the burden of hesitation. Finally, she made the most important decision of the meeting. She agreed to participate in the gladiator tournament. The decision from Lawrence was quickly sent out, and soon after, Barco also agreed. Both houses officially entered the decisive battle in the traditional gladiator format. After sending notification to the court, the tournament was scheduled to take place a week later. At the main execution ground, the royal referee, Count Ertz, officially declared the opening of the ceremony. Count Ertz solemnly declared, "The gladiator tournament is a sacred ritual blessed by the god Valhalla, where the honor and fate of 2 clans will be decided by strength and courage. Standing on the grandstand, Flora, Roman, and her father silently watched. The referee's voice rang out, declaring, regardless of the outcome, both clans must absolutely obey the final verdict. The killing intent rose as the referee sternly warned, any side violating the commitment would face severe punishment in the name of the Kingdom of Cairo, where law and honor are supreme. Referee Ertz officially requested both sides to submit lists of 3 gladiators, along with their fighting order, marking the start of the honor-deciding tournament between the 2 clans. A glass of wine was silently filled, the calm before the bloody storm about to unfold on the arena of honor. Roman stood silently, his cold gaze directed at Barco's members who were laughing comfortably. Without any tension, they seemed to be attending a party rather than preparing for a deadly battle deciding the honor of 2 clans. Roman's sharp purple eyes narrowed, reflecting suspicion. Beneath that calm exterior was a mind constantly calculating. Clearly something unusual was happening. While laughter still echoed in his ears, Roman whispered to Lawrence's general, "I think we need to change the fighting order." The words shocked the Golden Knight, as all plans had been decided a week ago. Roman briefly explained. A week had passed, and that made him uneasy. The pressure of debt should have broken Barco, but in reality, it was the opposite. Time was dragging unusually long, and clearly Barco was using it to prepare something more sinister than negotiation. Roman glanced subtly at the opponents, those who showed no sign of worry. They laughed, raised their glasses, and acted as if victory was already in their hands. Suspicion spread even to Lawrence's commander. The old knight began to wonder silently, could Barco have hired an extremely formidable warrior during that time? The sound of chairs scraping on the floor echoed in the increasingly suffocating atmosphere, a sign of new movement, possibly an unexpected change in the upcoming battle. But contrary to speculation, the one who stood up was a drunken soldier. He leaned back in his chair, head tilted back, snoring loudly, a ridiculous sight amid the tense atmosphere. In a hazy daze, Barco's warrior seemed to see a figure radiating dense killing intent, Roman Dmitri, like an embodiment of a nightmare descending. Fear crept into his subconscious even before the battle began. Faced with the proposal to change tactics, Count Lawrence frowned suspiciously. He had to ask Roman, the one who devised this unusual move, whether he had a specific plan for swapping the fighting order. Roman calmly reanalyzed the original strategy. He would start the match to gain advantage, followed by another Lawrence knight, and finally Chris would finish with the decisive victory. Everything had been carefully arranged, but now had to change. A calm voice rang out like an undeniable command. Chris will fight first. The unexpected decision stunned the entire council, as if the game had been flipped in an instant. Surprise spread across the allies' seats. Count Lawrence could not hide his shock, and Flora fell silent, clutching her hand anxiously. This decision was not just a tactic, but a signal that Roman was ready to risk everything. With bright purple eyes, Roman gave a cold, confident smile. He chose the second position, ready to face the secret weapon Barco was hiding. Once again, Roman Dmitri stepped forward like a wind, turning the tide. The stands began to stir, whispers growing into waves of unease. The decision to change the lineup created a strange breeze, making spectators wonder if House Lawrence was hiding a strategy beyond expectations. The sound thundered like lightning as the 2 gladiators stepped onto the arena. The atmosphere was suffocatingly tense, all eyes fixed on the opening battle that would shape the entire tournament's outcome. From Barco's side, a tall, cold gladiator stepped forward, his deep voice echoing, "I am Jansen of Barco." He was a level 3 Aura Knight, a warrior any opponent must beware of. Chris did not hesitate to step forward to face the enemy. He stood upright, eyes resolute. "I am Chris of Lawrence." As a level 2 Aura Knight, the level gap was clear, but his fighting spirit burned fiercely, no less intense. The battle began. Standing in the arena, Chris attracted curious and doubtful looks from the crowd. Whispers mentioned his prestigious background, the protege of Jonathan, the genius of the Northeast. Yet they also questioned the ability of a level 2 knight facing a clearly stronger opponent. Despite skeptical looks and pitying whispers, Chris kept his sharp eyes. Inside, he repeated his own determination. Only by facing danger could he truly grow and become stronger. The starting signal rang out like a battle bell. The flag bearing Lawrence's emblem fluttered in the wind, marking the moment when courage and faith would be tested on the blood-soaked arena of honor. Without hesitation, both knights charged forward. The ground shook, dust swirling with each determined step. The battle between 2 Aura Knight levels officially began. A blazing black and red aura surrounded Jansen as he swung his sword, his eyes revealing clear killing intent. His furious aura energy seemed to engulf the arena, creating a pressure curtain suppressing his opponent. Recalling training sessions with Roman Dmitri, Chris understood a simple but essential truth. No matter how strong the opponent, the key was to maintain rhythm and stand firm against the storm. Thinking and acting, Chris charged forward, dodging each storm-like strike from his opponent. In his eyes, there was nothing but one goal: keep the battle's rhythm, keep alive, keep hope. Jansen's firepower raged like a forest fire, but Chris did not back down. With all his skill, he kept up with the attacks, exploiting every tiny gap to survive amidst the aura storm. Chris gritted his teeth, narrowly dodging a deadly strike. His mind echoed a reminder, dodge, dodge, wait for the right moment. One chance, just one chance to counterattack. Then Chris's eyes flashed with determination. He was still waiting, for a moment as thin as a blade, but enough to turn the tide. Amid the opponent's barrage, Chris searched for the single opportunity to deliver the decisive blow. Jansen, furious at failing to land a killing blow, roared in rage. His storm-like attacks were continuously evaded by Chris, making him impatient. Amid his fury, the clash of steel sounded like a signal that the confrontation was about to reach its climax. In that moment, Jansen unleashed all his fury into a powerful slash, dark red light enveloping his sword. He screamed, a single word escaping like a death sentence, "Die." Before Chris was a swirling vortex of blazing red aura. He clearly felt the terrifying killing intent from his opponent, a power far beyond his level. Unease rose within him. The aura was so immense it made it hard to breathe. Chris stared straight into the incoming wave of death. His eyes widened in horror. The only thought occupying his mind was helplessness. He could neither dodge nor counterattack. He was cornered. What should I do? In that fearful moment, the memory of Roman Dmitri appeared like a saving light. The cold but steady voice of his mentor echoed, "Chris, you must think beyond the limits of this world." Chris's eyes snapped open as if light had pierced the darkness. He realized what he still lacked, not strength but combat thinking. His will awakened. He began gathering aura with unprecedented clarity. Chris closed his eyes to focus, narrowing the chaotic mana flow. As Roman taught, he did not scatter energy but concentrated it into a single point. Now his body became a living sword with blazing blue light. The energy flow condensed, transforming from a wide plane to a thin line, then shrinking to a point. Chris's mind was calm like a still lake. He focused all his power into the sword, shaping his will into a single finishing strike. The eyes of both warriors met in a fateful instant. One burned with fierce killing intent, the other with the cold sharpness of steadfast will. In that gaze, Chris and Jansen both knew this would be the decisive life-or-death blow. A blue lightning bolt tore through the battlefield. Chris crossed Jansen's blazing red sword in a breath. The slash was without hesitation, a single thrust forged from will, technique, and absolute clarity. The final slash ended the match. The heavy sound echoed as Jansen's bloodied body collapsed onto the arena floor. His long silver hair soaked in blood rolled in a bright red pool like a fateful full stop to arrogant pride. The stands erupted in thunderous cheers. The name Chris was shouted repeatedly, like a wave spreading across the arena. From initial disdain, the audience was now completely conquered by the young warrior's indomitable spirit and breakthrough strength. Chris knelt on the arena floor, gasping with spent strength. He could not believe the victory he had just won. A level 2 knight like him had defeated Jansen, a formidable level 3 opponent. But the sweat rolling down was not only from exhaustion, but also from amazement at the limit he had just broken himself. From Barco's stands, a silver-haired warrior with purple gleaming eyes stepped forward, his gaze cold but his smile full of confidence. Unshaken by the recent defeat, he merely smirked and called out, "Next!" The battle was just beginning, and the challenge for House Lawrence was far from over. Cheers echoed throughout the stands as Chris defeated Barco's level 3 knight in a single strike. This victory not only shook the arena, but also overturned all initial predictions about the competition's outcome. The audience erupted in astonishment and amazement. They could not believe that a level 2 knight could defeat an opponent of a higher rank. The event that just took place was being passed around like a newly born legend. While the crowd cheered, the hand of an outsider silently trembled. His expression was a mix of surprise and anger. The match he believed would be an easy win had turned out completely the opposite. The commander of the Barco faction growled inwardly with frustration. The plan to end the battle by the second match had completely failed. Now he was forced to pin all hopes on the final match, a move that was not well prepared. However, even in defeat, he maintained some calm. He reassured himself, believing that the second match was never a concern. The one he truly trusted was still waiting to step into the arena. Amidst the heated atmosphere, a knight with lazy blue hair stood up from his seat. He rubbed his eyes drowsily and asked absent-mindedly, as if nothing happening concerned him, "Is it my turn now?" His footsteps echoed on the wooden stage floor as he gradually approached the arena. His leisurely demeanor was completely at odds with the tense atmosphere of the upcoming battle. He yawned widely, walking sluggishly as if just waking up. In his eyes, this battle seemed unworthy of seriousness, let alone something to worry about. Upon stepping onto the battlefield, the unfamiliar knight casually introduced himself. "I am Homerus of Barco." The moment his name was spoken, the system announced his true rank, or a knight level 4, far surpassing all previous opponents. A heavy atmosphere suddenly enveloped the Lawrence faction. Astonished, confused, and fearful eyes all turned toward Homerus. They could not believe that the strongest warrior was saved for the final match. A name thundered through the clear sky: Homerus. In the stands, a stunned silence fell as all eyes focused on the man who had just appeared in the arena. Some began to recognize his identity: a wandering knight, a title not only unfamiliar but also inspiring awe. No one had ever witnessed a true ranked knight before, let alone here in this arena. His name was Homerus, ranked 49th on the Knights' Pantheon. The calm demeanor and cold aura radiating from him made it easy to recognize his superiority. If not for the guild leader's personal request, he would have no interest in such battles. The knight ranking system was originally a legacy of the Valhalla Empire, a powerful ancient empire that once ruled the continent. The title was not only a symbol of strength, but also a measure of glory that every warrior yearned to achieve. Valhalla, according to legend, is the eternal resting place for brave warriors. It is reserved only for those who live and die for honor. To be recognized, each warrior must venture into battle, risking their life to be recorded in this sacred land. And it was this harshness that formed the ranking system, where glorious feats were recorded, and only the strongest could leave their names in history. This was the origin of the ranked knight title. Although initially a tradition unique to the Valhalla Empire, as their influence spread, the ranking system quickly disseminated across the continent. Now, it has become the common standard for all who follow the path of the swordsman. The list of knights is strictly supervised by the Valhalla Temple. Only 100 people can be listed at the same time. This makes entering the ranking chart the highest honor a knight can dream of. Even the seasoned figures in House Lawrence did not expect Barco to deploy a name like Homerus. The stunned expressions of the council members were proof of the strategic shock they were facing. In the kingdom of Cairo, no one was unaware of Homerus. He wandered across all lands, challenging the strongest knights just to satisfy his passion for fighting. Because of this, he was known by the nickname, the Wandering Knight. Whispers echoed throughout the stands. Some mentioned the legendary battle between Homerus and the main gatekeeper, a level 4 knight ranked 30th. Others feared upon learning Homerus had just reached level 4, believing Lawrence had no choice but to withdraw from this fateful match. On the arena, Homerus yawned and calmly commented that Lawrence's victory in the first match was flashy but regrettable. His indifferent attitude was completely at odds with the terrifying power just revealed, as if this battle was merely a stroll for him. While the entire audience buzzed over Homerus's appearance, Roman Dmitri merely smiled slightly. His cold but confident expression seemed to hide a strange excitement, as if he was anticipating something interesting. Roman Dmitri raised an eyebrow, muttering about the opponent before him, a level 4 or a knight. But instead of worry, his eyes gleamed with challenge, as if a part of him always longed to face the strongest. Memories of a previous investigation surfaced. Roman had used an underground information network to uncover Barco's secrets, but all he received was public information. No one knew what trump card Barco had prepared for this decisive battle. Now, with Homerus appearing openly in the arena, Roman finally understood. This was the ace Barco had hidden from all intelligence systems. A dangerous and discreet move that made the battle more unpredictable than ever. Instead of worry, Roman felt his blood boil. He thought silently, "I can't wait any longer." For him, this was not just a battle. It was an opportunity to surpass limits, to prove himself before a living legend. Roman stepped onto the battlefield, facing Homerus. In his heart echoed a clear notion. No matter how strong his opponent was, they had never known the full true power he possessed. Flora ran over, grasping Roman's hand in desperation, begging him to retreat. Her eyes revealed fear, not because she doubted Roman, but because she feared he would sacrifice himself in vain against an overwhelmingly strong opponent. She shouted anxiously, "That's Homerus, ranked 49th on the Knights leaderboard." Flora's warning caused the surrounding atmosphere to freeze. This was no longer an ordinary honor battle, but a life-or-death confrontation. The sky seemed to darken as the name Homerus was emphasized. Ranked 49th, but rumored to soon reach the top 30. Every feat of his created aftershocks, and now he was the storm Roman had to face. Flora tightened her grip on Roman's hand. Her eyes panicked as she tried to pull him out of the fight. She could not understand why Roman dared to confront a ranked knight, something she considered impossible. Unwavering, Roman responded with a cold but firm statement. If she was truly worried, then pray for the final match. He had no intention of retreating. Homerus glanced briefly at the two from afar. Though his expression was unclear, his eyes seemed to be assessing his opponent, not out of fear, but due to an intriguing difference. Roman's eyes lit up with a fierce spark, reflecting an unshakable will. Before the top fighter in the arena, he showed no fear but was ready to reveal determination to surpass all limits. From the other side, Homerus noticed this. He silently evaluated Roman's gaze, a look without any fear, but rather as if challenging the authority of a high-ranking knight. From the other side, Homerus noticed this. He silently assessed Roman's gaze, a look without any fear, but rather as if challenging the authority of a high-ranking knight. He quietly communicated with his teammates from Barco, signaling them to change the plan. It was time to withdraw Homerus from this round and send out another knight as a psychological strike against Lawrence. Flora continued to plead with Roman. She expressed her fear without hesitation. This was no longer just a match but a life-or-death gamble, and she was certain Roman would lose. Roman gently brushed Flora's hand away, not allowing her to block his path. The gesture was decisive, as if he had made up his mind long ago and would accept no interference. Roman's cold voice rang out in the darkness, cutting through Flora's worries. He did not want to explain everything, nor did he need her consent, just that she stopped standing in his way. And so he walked on, his red cloak billowing like a declaration of war. Roman Dmitri strode into the arena, his red cloak flying behind him amid the tense atmosphere. In that moment, he spoke firmly, affirming his identity, a knight from House Lawrence, carrying pride and responsibility without need for flowery introductions. Facing the new opponent, Homerus, the Barco knight, tightened his grip on the blazing sword in his hand. He did not bother to hide his seriousness, showing that despite his indifferent appearance, his heart was ready for battle. In response, Roman also clenched the hilt of his sword. Standing firm, his eyes calm yet resolute, he showed no fear before the momentum of Barco's secret weapon. The enemy silently evaluated his opponent. If Roman was strong enough to destroy a flare, then he must be at least a level 2 or a knight. Though his true strength was unclear, he knew this was not someone to be underestimated. However, contempt quickly showed in the opponent's eyes. He believed he deserved to face higher-ranked knights like Fernando, ranked 30th, rather than waste time on an unknown like Roman. Homerus uttered a bored remark and charged forward. With lightning speed, he wanted to end the match quickly, not out of respect for his opponent, but because he considered it a trivial matter unworthy of time. An opening slash tore through the air, the fiery blade forming a deadly curve rushing toward Roman like a whirlwind. Spectators barely had time to realize what was happening. The knights outside the arena were shocked by that terrifying speed. Their faces revealed fear and astonishment, as in a flash the attack had closed in on Roman. But in the next moment, the sound of clashing metal rang like thunder. Roman's sword firmly blocked the slash, repelling the seemingly unstoppable killing blow, leaving everyone breathless. In the flashing light, Roman stood motionless. Without panic or retreat, he raised his golden sword as if he had anticipated everything, the calm look in his eyes like a warrior who knew victory was already in his hands. As the battle began, both warriors unleashed their maximum speed. Aura fiercely swirled around their bodies, forming violent vortexes like arrows flying straight at each other. Contrary to his previous disdain, Jansen now showed clear excitement. His face lit up with enthusiasm upon realizing his opponent was not easily defeated as he thought, turning this fight into a worthy contest. The clashing sword energies between Roman and Jansen created sharp sounds. The relentless attacks from both sides made the arena glow with flashing lights continuously. Roman's sword emitted a strange light, swirling evenly with radiant purple energy. A highly refined mana flowed around the blade, signaling that a special skill was being activated. Jansen charged like a wild beast, screaming madly. As he attacked, he growled at Roman, demanding to know how he could summon such a strange aura, his eyes filled with obsession and ambition. Roman frowned for a moment. Deep down, he felt disappointed that his opponent still hadn't unleashed his full strength. He had hoped this would be a true battle after so many days longing for a worthy challenge. But then Jansen hissed with excitement, his entire body erupting in a dazzling blue light, signaling level 3 aura. He entered the zenith state, determined to go all out. The ground shook violently beneath Jansen's feet as he activated his full aura power. A massive pillar of light shot straight into the sky, drilling deep into the earth and making the entire space tremble. Waves of energy spread throughout the stands. The audience panicked, clinging to the railings as the fierce vortex swept over them. Everyone was terrified by the true might of a level 3 aura warrior. Roman still stood firm amid the energy storm, his eyes unblinking as he stared at his opponent. He thought to himself, if this was the 49th ranked warrior, then he had expected too much from that title. Roman Dmitri, with icy eyes and absolute faith in victory, affirmed to himself that there was no need to prolong this fight any longer. The decision was made, and hesitation had no place left. Stepping forward amid the opponent's fierce aura vortex, Roman stood firm like a war god. His gaze unwavering, he called out to his opponent in a calm yet pressuring voice. With just 2 short words, "Take this," Roman declared his next attack. A display of absolute authority, no frills, only pure power from someone who had surpassed all conventional standards. In the pitch-black space, Roman's weapon and movement merged with the mist. Demonic sword technique, a move without form or warning, like darkness descending unnoticed. The enemy, unprepared, was stunned by the surging black wave. Standing in a battlefield swallowed by a strange aura, he could only cry out in panic, "A black wave." A look of astonishment appeared on the opponent's face, as he admitted he had never seen such a manifestation of aura. Each strand of black energy seemed to devour the light, making the battlefield eerily mysterious and frightening. But amid the shock and wonder, Roman felt only disappointment inside. "How boring!" a cold sigh echoed in the dark night, as if sentencing his opponent as unworthy. From above, in the space torn apart by mysterious purple radiance, Roman appeared like a transcendent being. As his sword blazed in the sky, every eye in the arena was drawn to the only one still holding the initiative. Without any sign of anger or agitation, Roman walked forward with absolute calm. It was as if the outcome of the battle had been written by him before it even began. Each of his footsteps echoed in the silence after the storm. Step! That small sound carried the weight of a judgment bell, closing an uneven clash between 2 worlds. Roman Dmitri closed his eyes, focusing completely. Without looking, he let instinct and swordsmanship guide him. The finishing blow was ready, carrying the might of one who refused to be underestimated. Amid the tense situation at the negotiation table, a powerful gentleman named Homrus spoke in a calm but serious tone. Every word was carefully considered, as if preparing for an important request to be made. The leader continued to express understanding of Homrus's desire to confront the legendary swordsman Fernando. However, he emphasized that what was necessary now was for Homrus to fully grasp their political stance and strategy regarding this proposal. The man explained that this was not just a simple duel, but a resolution of conflict between 2 great clans at the border region. He hoped Homrus would see the upcoming battle as a warm-up before the real fight with Fernando. Leaning back on the sofa, Homrus showed no excitement. He pondered the missions he had previously refused since being ranked A for him. Traveling across the kingdom to find strong opponents was always more appealing than politically binding tasks. After a moment of thought, the corner of Homrus's mouth slightly curled into a meaningful smile. This time, it seemed he could not refuse the invitation. There was something about the upcoming fight that truly interested him. Cut to the arena, the ground stained with blood and shattered, evidence that a fierce battle had just taken place. Without any dialogue, the scene itself conveyed the brutality of the fight. Flora, watching from afar, was stunned speechless. She did not expect things to escalate to this extent, her expression a mix of worry and amazement. In the audience, the atmosphere suddenly turned chaotic. People were stunned and shocked, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Whispers mixed with cries of panic filled the air. On the battlefield, Homrus, who had entered the ranks of knights before reaching Knight 4 level, lay motionless in his own pool of blood. Once considered an outstanding talent, the recent strike proved otherwise. Against the blue sky, while everyone was still in shock, Roman Dmitri calmly turned his back. His move swept across the arena like a whirlwind, taking the life of someone who once dreamed of entering the top 30. A clean finish in a single strike. Roman Dmitri calmly sheathed his sword, his red cloak fluttering in the wind. His standards did not belong to this world. They were forged in a much harsher previous life. In the former Murim world, Roman had faced countless masters with supernatural abilities. There, every moment could be your last. Compared to Murim, energy control skills in the current world were crude and weak to the point that Roman only felt disappointment. Nevertheless, he maintained his composure facing the fallen opponent. Roman turned to look at the referee with cold eyes. Without further words, he gave a brief order. Announce the result. The trembling referee bowed his head, stammering as he was still recovering from the battle. The winner of round 2 is Roman Dmitri of Lawrence. The entire arena was stunned by that announcement. The Barco Knights stood frozen, unable to believe their ears. They could not comprehend what had just happened. One of the Barco warriors exclaimed, "Homrus is dead!" That truth plunged everyone into an inexplicable nightmare. Hands clenched tightly in anger and fear. Emotions surged uncontrollably over the sudden and brutal defeat of their trump card. Chris, who had fought alongside Roman, looked at the scene in amazement. He now realized this was truly Roman Dmitri's real power. Chris wondered in confusion, had Roman been this strong all along, or did he only develop this power after their duel? This extraordinary progress completely defied all normal logic. Chris still could not believe his eyes as he saw Roman Dmitri step out from the steps with a calm demeanor. Bowing his head in shock, he wondered how someone like Homerus, a celebrated knight level 4, could fall in the blink of an eye. Chris recalled his victory over Jansen. At that time, he was confident, believing he could quickly catch up to Roman, even surpass him with a bit more training. But witnessing Roman's true power, Chris was forced to face the bitter truth. All his previous thoughts were naive, and now he understood he had greatly underestimated the gap between them. At the end of the second round, House Lawrence achieved a resounding victory. The red flag with the eagle emblem flew proudly before the eyes of the people and the defeated enemies. The official announced the post-match rule. Once the round results are confirmed, both sides will have a final chance to decide who will participate in the ultimate battle, avoiding unnecessary loss of forces. On Barco's side, the remaining warriors bowed their heads trembling. The truth of Homerus's defeat plunged the entire team into panic and despair. No one dared to raise their face. A young knight could not contain his fear, collapsing onto the table and groaning. In his heart echoed an unanswered question. Why did Homerus lose? He was not an ordinary man like those from the East. Memories of Homerus resurfaced like a nightmare overturning reason. He was a high-class knight, honored as the kingdom's elite. So why could it be that the one who just died was an imposter? In his panic, he even suspected the mercenary guild had deceived him. The thought that the fallen warrior was not the real Homerus made him glare wildly, sweating coldly in an inexplicable obsession. A knight stepped up to Barco's leader and asked the necessary question. Who would be the next to fight? Meanwhile, Barco's commander clenched his hands in anger and frustration, realizing they could not afford any more losses. Barco raised his head, his eyes still filled with shock after Homerus's defeat. He choked out an order. Call Benson, a seemingly unknown name, now becoming the last pawn in this life-or-death game. The declaration stunned the officer beside him. In his eyes, that order was no different from a death sentence for someone with no reputation or significant strength. Recalling the past, the man named Benson had caused scandal at a noble party, dragging his reputation into the mud. Now, Barco saw this battle as a chance for redemption, forcing Benson to bear responsibility for past mistakes. In reality, Benson was no outstanding knight. He had never reached any aura level, a mediocre, unknown figure among many true warriors. Sending him into the arena now was tantamount to sending him to his death. Despite knowing this, the officer could only bow and obey. No one could stop Barco's desperate decision, even if it meant sacrificing another person. Under the curious and suspicious eyes of thousands, Benson trembled as he stepped forward, trying to utter his name. I am Benson of Barco, a warrior without rank, fame, or a glimmer of hope. His unexpected appearance caused a stir among the audience. Whispered murmurs arose non-stop. No one had ever heard of this name, an unknown opponent in the bloody arena. Even Lawrence's side could not hide their surprise. They watched the unfamiliar soldier step out, a heavy atmosphere spreading everywhere as no one understood Barco's intentions. As Benson set foot on the battlefield, his whole body stiffened. Each step felt like walking on the edge of life and death, yet he moved forward because orders from above were impossible to defy. In front of him was Roman Dmitri, the one who had just defeated Homerus. Without waiting for orders, a Lawrence knight stepped forward, bowing. Sir, allow me to fight. The eyes beneath his helmet blazed, determination reflected through the cold gaze of the young soldier ready to face fate. Roman Dmitri silently observed Kevin with calm but sharp eyes. No words were spoken, but it was clear he was considering whether the young knight's decision deserved approval. In a world where the weak are eliminated, failure meant not only loss of honor but also death. To Roman, this was not a match, it was the harsh filtering of fate. Although Benson was not an aura-level knight, for someone like Kevin who had never truly stepped onto the battlefield, that opponent was still a challenge beyond his ability. Roman wondered, was this courage or reckless desperation? But perhaps in Kevin's eyes, this was the last chance to prove his worth to his lord. With a resolute gaze, he stood tall, as if offering all his faith and loyalty. A moment of silence passed, then the corner of Roman's mouth slightly curled into a cold smile. He simply said, "Go." The order given was also acceptance of the final trial. With a determined tone, Kevin replied, "I will end this quickly, sir." Without looking back, he stepped down into the arena like a warrior ready to face his destiny. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, Benson's trembling hands gripped the sword hilt tightly. Waves of regret and fear flooded his mind, drowning reason. Why have I fallen into this situation? Benson realized that all these years he had never had to fight for survival. Riding on his father's shadow, he had walked the knight's path too easily, and now that ease had trapped him in a dead end. Fear surged violently within him, but reason clung to the last shred of pride. "I am a knight of Barco, the most powerful clan in the Northeast," he screamed in his mind, as if that title could save him from death. Though still muttering oaths of loyalty, Benson's heart was filled with bitterness. Devotion to Barco gave him nothing but imminent death. The footsteps of his opponent echoed, pulling him back to reality, where only fear remained. Heavy footsteps echoed in the tense air as Kevin, the young knight of Lawrence, advanced onto the battlefield with all determination shining in his eyes beneath the helmet. Benson looked up at the approaching opponent and froze upon realizing it was Kevin. In that moment of surprise, his worries temporarily vanished, replaced by an unexpected glimmer of hope. A crooked smile appeared on Benson's face. Inside him flared a blind belief that fate was on his side, that heaven had granted him an easier opponent than expected. The two knights entered the arena under the harsh sunlight. The whistle of wind through unsheathed swords echoed, creating a silent atmosphere heavy with pressure before the battle. Benson lightly covered his mouth, unable to hold back a laugh. He considered this a lucky farce, a heaven-sent chance to regain lost honor. Turning his gaze to Kevin, Benson sneered with sarcasm and venom. He recalled the past, treating today's fight as an opportunity to punish a weakling who dared oppose him. Benson's smirk deepened as he realized the harsh truth. Both had been abandoned by their lords. But unlike Kevin, he saw this as a chance to rise and prove his worth. Kevin remained silent, gripping his sword hilt tightly. Though scorned, his eyes shone with steadfast faith. He fought not for fame, but for the ideal of protecting his lord. Unable to contain his anger at being underestimated, Benson shouted and lunged forward. His sword sliced through the air, aiming straight at Kevin with clear intent to kill. But just as the strike came, Kevin reacted in time. He tilted his body, dodging the slash with a neat move, showing survival instincts sharper than his timid appearance. Jansen charged like a furious whirlwind, eyes blazing as he swung his sword directly at his opponent. All his weight and speed focused into a destructive strike, determined to decide the outcome with the very first blow. Jansen's blade grazed Kevin's neck, missing by a hair's breadth. Though the attack did not land, it was enough for Kevin to feel the cold breath of death brush past his skin. Kevin immediately sprang away and counterattacked, striking Jansen's side hard enough to stagger him. Though the blow caused no serious injury, it was a declaration. He was not prey to be easily swallowed. Jansen lost momentum, flying back across the arena with a harsh sound. Kevin's unexpected strike made the veteran warrior hesitate for the first time, doubt flashing in his eyes. Blood dripped from the wound onto the wooden floor, staining each square red. It was clear evidence that the battle had surpassed the boundaries of a mere test of strength. Kevin gripped his sword tightly, kneeling amid smoke rising from the arena floor. But instead of collapsing, he glared at his opponent as his aura began to shift, fierce and intense like never before. In the corner of the stands, Chris quietly observed. Though silent, he knew Kevin was completely outmatched in both physique and experience. Sweat trickled down his cheek, reflecting worry in his green eyes. Chris glanced toward the main stand, where Roman Dimitri stood tall. The question was clear in his mind. Why did the leader allow a young knight like Kevin to enter such an uneven battle? The battle continued fiercely. Kevin was struck on his armor. The collision produced a piercing sound, leaving a deep dent and sparks flying, each impact bringing death closer. A powerful slash hit Kevin's shoulder, causing him to bleed and stagger in pain. He gritted his teeth to endure, but his eyes still burned with fighting spirit, for honor for the teacher he admired. Blood poured from his wounded body, but Kevin did not fall. Instead, from the depths of pain, he forced himself to stand, eyes blazing through the reddish haze. In that moment, he was no longer a weak boy, but a warrior born from suffering, swallowing fear with pure will. Sinister whispers echoed in Kevin's mind like calls from hell. "Kill him! He's causing you pain!" Those voices surged, burning his reason. In his eyes glowed a fierce rage never seen before, the fire of hatred, humiliation, and a fury ready to consume all. From the moment you tried to sever your own arm, a sinister demonic poison gradually seeped into your mind, taking root, controlling, and distorting your reason day by day. The cold-haired man stood there like a teacher or a controller, clearly declaring, "The ghost soul demon art has manipulated your mind." With no other choice, he ordered, "Release the soul hidden deep inside, the evil thought you had tried to suppress for so many years." And then, as an instinctive reaction, blood and hatred surged back, erupting into a blazing shockwave, a demonic spirit rising. Kevin's face was now only half human. His eyes burned red with fury, and his scream tore through the peaceful atmosphere. Warnings rang out urgently from the observing knights. "Above, be careful!" But it was too late. Kevin charged like a bloodied arrow. In an instant, he unleashed a terrifying slash, carrying both killing intent and madness. The entire arena was stained by a fierce shockwave. Kevin landed with a slide, leaving a crack on the tiled floor as if the surface was torn apart. His gaze still burned fiercely at his target with overwhelming murderous intent. Distorted laughter echoed in his head, inciting words. "Tear him apart, rip him to pieces." Kevin clutched his head, struggling to control the chaotic stream of thoughts. Amid the chaos, images of Roman and Chris appeared, like a faint light at the end of the tunnel. Deep inside, Kevin still yearned to be recognized, to be useful. Kevin felt inferior and inadequate when constantly compared to stronger people. But despite being hurt, his loyalty to Roman never wavered. Anger and helplessness swirled like an endless vortex, swallowing his mind in darkness. The sealed power within Kevin began to awaken. Ghost Soul Demon Art, the forbidden demonic martial art, now dominated his consciousness, infusing his sword with a wild black and red killing aura. Eerie laughter echoed in his mind, urging Kevin to finish off his opponent. His blazing red eyes reflected a controlled will, and his body surged forward like a nightmare in human form, charging at his foe with terrifying intent to kill. The knight standing before Kevin was horrified as he sensed the raging power emanating from his opponent. This force surrounding him was no ordinary energy. It surpassed all limits achievable by someone without an aura. A blazing red light tore through the air. Kevin swung his sword with all his fury, causing the opponent's armor to screech sharply. The slash not only broke the armor, but also shattered his defensive spirit. Howling in pain and rage, the opponent launched a desperate counterattack. But despite trying to respond with brute strength, his body was flung into the air by Kevin's storm-like assault. Blood splattered everywhere. Kevin did not slow down or hesitate. His deep red eyes reflected only one thought: annihilation. The sword in his hand struck down again, regardless of any injuries. Terror overwhelmed the opponent's face. He shed tears in the life-or-death moment, realizing Kevin showed no sign of stopping. That fury was no longer human, but the rage of a demon disguised as a knight. The opponent screamed in panic. In his eyes, Kevin was no longer a teenager, but a strange, haunting creature with a twisted smile and crazed gaze. There was no doubt something terrible had invaded his mind. The finishing blow struck down. In that brutal moment, the images of Kevin and his opponent intertwined amidst the blood-red light. A sword pierced through the body, and the darkness in Kevin's mind fully erupted like a ghost devouring reason. Chris, who once held a central position among the knights, could not hide his shock. His eyes followed Kevin with astonishment, while from the stands, the faces of common folk were also stunned by the scene that had just unfolded. Beside Benson's bloodied corpse, Kevin remained in an attack-ready stance. The blood-stained sword was still raised, surrounded by a red glow of magical aura. The faint groans of the opponent echoed like a final lament on the brutal battlefield. Contrary to sympathy or panic, a satisfied smile appeared clearly on Kevin's face. It seemed in his eyes, the bloody scene was not an accident, but an inevitable result of his desire to prove himself. Without stopping, Kevin continued to stab as if trying to purge all doubts and fears that had tormented him. Each frenzied thrust not only targeted Benson's body, but also tore apart his own weak past. Blood splattered everywhere. Under the gray sky, each stab sounded like a death knell. The scene cut through the breath of all spectators, horrifying and impossible to look away from. From the stands, Count Lawrence and Lady Flora were speechless. Eyes wide, hands covering their mouths, both could not believe what they were witnessing. A once shy boy was now turning into a monster in the arena. Breathing heavily, Kevin silently stood amid the blood-soaked battlefield, facing the blazing red wall of destruction he had created. Back straight, sword lowered, but his mind had not yet left the madness. He stepped slowly onto the platform, each step heavy as if carrying all his rage and guilt. Each footfall echoed in silence, marking a new milestone in Kevin's journey. Before Roman Dmitri, Kevin knelt on one knee, bowing humbly. His words were brief but powerful. "I have returned, my lord." Though leaving the battlefield, his spirit remained undiminished. Roman smiled softly, his eyes shining with satisfaction. "Well done, Kevin." The short praise was the greatest recognition the boy had ever longed for, a blessing from the one he regarded as everything. The knights and people of Lawrence stood stunned, witnessing Kevin's frenzied rage in the arena. The bloody scene and overwhelming power left them speechless, only able to stand frozen in shock. Kevin pinned his enemy to the ground, his sword piercing deep into the opponent's body. The final groan echoed in the heavy air as blood spilled beneath the young knight's feet. He smiled, a pure smile without resentment or regret, simply the simple happiness of someone who finally proved himself to the one he respected most. The battle ended, and the outcome of the duel tournament between Lawrence and Barco was decided. With 3 absolute victories, Lawrence gained the upper hand, ending Barco's conspiracy to the astonishment of all spectators. Like legends passed down through generations, the story of this victory spread everywhere, blending fact and myth. All praise focused on a single name: Roman Dmitri. At the tavern, amid clinking glasses and fragrant grilled meat, conversations began to rise. "Have you heard?" Excitement filled the air as the victory became the main topic in every discussion. "Barco must be going crazy, right?" Someone laughed loudly. They began recounting each battle, each victory, like telling a fairy tale that had just come to life in reality. "My family is originally from Lawrence." Someone raised their hand high, face beaming. The event had turned the people into part of the victory, and everyone wanted to be part of this glorious moment. Roman Dmitri was now hailed as the savior of Lawrence. In the imagination of the people, that night alone had cut down hundreds of Barco cavalry, a legend embellished, shining in the public's belief. Another added, he even destroyed the flare cannon with a single strike. Roman's feats were continuously exaggerated, becoming an undefeated symbol that folk tales would recount forever. The fame of Roman Dimitri's achievements did not stop at Lawrence, but spread like fire through dry grasslands, increasingly celebrated nationwide. The image of the young warrior with a flowing red cloak was gradually etched into people's minds as a symbol of courage and glory. Meanwhile, at Barco Castle, the former power center of the northeast region, a heavy atmosphere hung over. The towering walls now only emphasized the isolation and deadlock of the once ruler. Amidst a study filled with letters and official documents, a weak sigh was heard. "I'm finished." The piled-up papers were not just official business, but a manifestation of the rapid collapse of all hopes. Lord Barco sat slumped before his desk, hands clutching his head in despair. His muttered words, "I'm truly finished," were like a confession from someone who had lost everything. In his mind, bitter realities rushed forth, the Golden Bank demanding principal and interest payments, while the Mercenary Guild pressed for compensation for Homerus's death. His shoulders trembled under the economic and political pressures, simultaneously suffocating him. A hand slammed down on the desk echoed through the silent room. "Damn parasitic scum!" he roared in anger. But curses changed nothing, only scattering papers as proof of his helplessness. Recalling the peak era when Barco was the greatest power in the Northeast, he remembered those who once fawned and knelt to beg him. Now all of them had vanished. No one cared about past favors. In the quiet night, he looked toward the nobles turning their backs, his heart choked with bitterness. "Are they pretending not to know me now?" The bitter and furious question burst out. All resentment focused on one person, Roman Dimitri. He gritted his teeth and said with hatred, "If only he hadn't interfered," as if blaming the one who destroyed all his power schemes. The bitterness transformed into a stubborn notion. "It's all Roman Dimitri's fault." He clenched his fists, trying to find a reason to face defeat. To him, Roman's actions were unacceptable among nobles, and this would not be forgiven. In the dense darkness of despair, Lord Barco's eyes flickered with a distorted glimmer of last hope. He clenched both hands, telling himself there was still one final chance to save his family's shattered honor, a desperate plan to overturn the game ruined by Roman Dimitri. A few days later, a secret meeting was convened in Barco Castle's great hall. The few nobles still daring to appear sat around the round table under Lord Barco's cold and calculating gaze, now ready to bet everything on his final move. With a fake expression and solemn tone, Lord Barco opened the meeting by thanking those still on his side. He tried to create a sense of unity, but everyone clearly saw the collapse reflected in every line and action of his face. Though filled with doubt, some nobles still tried to maintain a calm demeanor. One spoke up, demanding the Lord get straight to the point, unwilling to waste time on meaningless flowery words at this critical moment. No longer hiding his intentions, Lord Barco chuckled harshly before speaking seriously. He asserted that what Barco lacked was a legitimate excuse to continue attacking Lawrence, a brazen justification for the unjust actions to come. A bald noble agreed with this argument. In noble society, every action, even war, must be legitimized by a convincing reason. They were seeking loopholes rather than enforcing justice. Lord Barco continued to spin the story to his advantage. He claimed the war broke out to seek justice for ancestors, confirmed by the central government and even a judge, a disguise for personal ambition. But then his tone changed. He condemned Roman Dimitri for intervening in the war without cause, blaming him for Barco losing a flare unit, a strategic weapon Roman destroyed in a bold counterattack. Not stopping there, he loudly accused that all the fighters representing Lawrence in the tournament were not actually from Lawrence, implying Lawrence cheated and violated the spirit of the competition, though Barco himself was far from innocent. Slamming his hand on the table, Lord Barco shouted as if justice belonged to his side. He provoked the nobles with a leading question. "By what right does Roman Dimitri interfere in all of Lawrence's affairs?" Turning personal jealousy into a twisted political call. Lord Barco continued manipulating the noble meeting with fallacious arguments. He declared that if an official relationship existed between the Dimitri and Lawrence houses, mutual support would be understandable. But with the marriage alliance cancelled, any help from Roman became illegitimate. He repeatedly asserted that Roman Dimitri, in name, was no different from a stranger to Lawrence. Therefore, any intervention in the war exceeded limits and could not be justified by political or social reasons. Anger and calculation gradually appeared in Lord Barco's eyes. He concluded firmly, Roman had completely crossed the line, breaking the social rules among nobles that everyone must follow. His argument quickly sparked waves of agreement in the conference. The nobles nodded in confirmation, chatting excitedly that Roman Dimitri truly had no legitimate reason to act as he did. The Barco leader saw this consensus and smiled smugly. Perfect. Inwardly, he nodded with satisfaction. The nobles had fallen into his trap. He needed nothing more than this agreement to launch the next step in his blame-shifting scheme. With support from the nobles, Lord Barco outlined a plan. He would blame everything on the Dmitri house, demand a huge compensation to cover damages, then use that money to repay the Golden Bank. A vile plot framed with satisfied laughter echoing in the room. As the dark scheme reached its climax, the sound of a door echoed along with approaching footsteps. Barco turned around, eyes full of surprise and tension, sensing that something unexpected was approaching. And indeed, Roman Dmitri appeared with a calm demeanor. Cold eyes, steady shoulders clad in armor and a red cloak. He entered the meeting room with a confident smile, as if already knowing all unfolding events. Roman did not beat around the bush. His sharp gaze swept across each noble's face as he clearly stated that he was aware of the criticisms aimed at him, and if they had any grievances, he was ready to face them. Lord Barco was completely stunned. Roman's sudden appearance left him speechless. He could not believe that the very person he was pouring all his efforts into attacking showed up at the most decisive moment, shattering all his covert plans. Before the suspicious and tense eyes of the entire conference, Roman Dmitri stepped forward and raised his head. His calm but sharp voice rang out. "Let me speak for myself." His cold purple eyes shone with unwavering determination as he named his opponent. Viscount Barco. No longer a vague accusation, Roman officially entered a direct confrontation, ready to expose the truth before all the nobles. Roman Dmitri suddenly appeared in the tense meeting room, where adversaries were openly criticizing his actions. With a calm expression but eyes flashing coldly, Roman took the initiative to speak himself, directing his words straight at Viscount Barco, the mastermind behind the slanderous plot. Roman stared sharply at Viscount Barco with piercing eyes, his purple gaze exuding overwhelming authority. His voice was decisive, without hesitation, uttering two weighty words. "Viscount Barco." It was not just a call, but a clear declaration of war, marking a turning point in the political confrontation. Meanwhile, in another corner of Lawrence Fortress, Chris, Roman's close companion, anxiously asked with a panicked look. The rumor that Roman went alone to Barco's land left him shocked and incredulous about such a bold decision. Chris desperately tried to persuade him, believing that action was tantamount to suicide. He vividly imagined the malice of Viscount Barco, who would certainly not miss the chance to kill Roman if possible. Nearby, Roman calmly prepared his horse, saying nothing. Roman slowly turned around, looking at Chris with cold eyes. He posed a counter-question. From Chris's perspective, could the relationship between himself and Barco still be mended? The question was not mere words, but a profound warning. Chris was momentarily stunned by that frankness. After a moment of thought, he reluctantly admitted, from Barco's side, Roman was no longer a political rival, but an implacable enemy. That was why Chris earnestly advised his master to avoid direct confrontation. Roman firmly rebutted. If nothing had started yet, he might consider retreating. But now, having personally ignited the conflict, he understood that only his own actions could end it. Sitting astride his horse, Roman looked into the distance where the battlefield of hatred awaited. He knew well that Barco hated him to the bone, a grudge that could not be resolved by words or reconciliation, but had to be ended decisively. Chris stared blankly after Roman's figure fading into the night. Overlapping thoughts arose. Barco was in a difficult position, and Roman, with his keen intuition, would surely not miss this opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. On his warhorse, Roman did not look back. The morning sunlight shone on his blood-red cloak, creating the image of someone determined to utterly destroy the root of the hatred. This was the only chance to end everything before it erupted into full-scale war. Under the watchful eyes of the entire council, Roman Dmitri entered the hall with a calm yet solemn demeanor. Stopping before the conference table, he raised his voice sharply, demanding that House Barco provide a legitimate reason for this extraordinary meeting. One of the attending nobles showed dissatisfaction. He contemptuously mentioned the name Barco with an angry face, claiming that Roman was merely a descendant of a countly family without an official title, unqualified to be present here. The anger building inside Roman could no longer be concealed. In the blood-red light, his eyes flared with a warning, signaling that such insults would not be easily overlooked. Roman quickly counterattacked with cold but noble words. He argued that the opponent was too accustomed to arrogance and ignorance to understand the basic etiquette of nobility. He declared he would teach them a lesson in proper conduct. One of the nobles spoke up in defense, asserting that intervening in war without just cause was forbidden in the kingdom of Cairo. His words were accompanied by visible anger shown through clenched fists. But that excuse only deepened Roman's contempt. He emphasized that House Barco had done everything according to noble law, from presenting a reasonable plan to receiving approval from the central government. That gave them the justification to ignite the territorial war, undeniable as it was. Viscount Barco's face appeared filled with anger and coldness. His eyes flashed a sharp glare when facing Roman, as if trying to control his fury in response to the frank rebuttal. Roman remained calm, his gaze as firm as steel. He declared that those laws were created not to conceal crimes, but to protect the dignity of the nobility. Each regulation carried a sacred purpose: to uphold honor. With a decisive gesture, Roman slammed his hand on the table, the thud echoing like a warning. He stated that ignorance of noble laws could not be used as an excuse for arrogant and overstepping behavior. Viscount Barco shouted angrily, accusing Roman of acting thoughtlessly and tarnishing the Dmitri family's reputation. But Roman remained silent, his eyes sharp as a sword, ready to confront and undaunted by any criticism. The blonde noble's anger peaked as he slammed the table hard, threatening that the entire Dmitri family would suffer the wrath of the northeastern nobility, just because of the foolishness and incompetence of the young heir. The heavy threat plunged the hall into tense silence. All eyes turned to Roman Dmitri, who stood calmly, facing judgment without flinching. Roman broke the silence with a cold question, cutting off his furious opponent. His decisive voice caused the nobleman to pause, stunned by the unexpected composure from the despised one. With a faint smile on his lips, Roman declared that now was the time to justify his actions. No longer silent, he now took control of the entire narrative. The nobleman was stunned into speechlessness. His eyes revealed unease before the initiative Roman was seizing in this powerful setting. Roman calmly recalled that the betrothal between House Lawrence and House Dmitri had been arranged, but he ended up becoming a laughingstock with the title, The Broken Engagement. Roman turned to question everyone seated in the meeting room, demanding they speculate on the real reason behind the broken engagement, a question that made many uneasy. Some stammered, mentioning rumors about Roman's bad reputation and relationships with women, but he quickly dismissed them. All were baseless rumors. Roman slowly raised his hand, preparing to reveal the long-hidden truth, the real reason he accepted the stain on his honor without protest all this time. With determined eyes, Roman pointed straight ahead, clearly declaring, it all began with a threat from Anthony Barco, the eldest son of House Barco. The newly revealed truth made the atmosphere in the room freeze. Faced with Roman's accusation, the Barco noble's complexion changed, rising in anger and shock. The entire council fell silent as tension peaked, no one expecting such a serious charge. Roman did not let his opponent's anger sway him. He calmly placed his hand on the table and began recounting the past, leading everyone back to the lavish party years ago of the Barco family, the origin of the long-hidden political tragedy. The memory unfolded as Roman told that he once considered Anthony Barco a close friend. He had accepted an invitation to a pre-wedding party with Miss Lawrence, but he did not expect that party to be a trap set from the start. Waking up the next morning, Roman was stunned to find himself lying in bed with Emily Barco. From this staged situation, Anthony Barco held leverage to force him to break off the engagement with House Lawrence, pushing him into an inescapably humiliating position. Roman's voice deepened, his cold gaze sweeping across the nobles. He emphasized that the entire plan was a carefully calculated conspiracy to break the marriage alliance between the Dmitri and Lawrence houses, sowing distrust among the nobility. The nobles all murmured in unrest. Whispered conversations echoed around the round table. One asked skeptically, was he really threatened? While another stammered, so Barco's reason is a lie. The memory of his father appeared like a warm light. Roman recalled his father's words. Once you expose shame to the light, it ceases to be shame. And now he had done just that, standing tall before the council and speaking the truth. Cornered, the Barco noble growled in rebuttal. He could not keep calm, slamming the table as he questioned Roman in anger. Do people really believe such nonsense? The attacks continued, Barco hurling personal insults, calling Roman a despicable fool. But contrary to expectations, Roman only smiled calmly, responding as if he had anticipated all this opposition. Still maintaining a composed demeanor, Roman looked straight ahead. He spoke, affirming there was another reason for his involvement in the war between Lawrence and Barco, the real reason that would completely break the silence in the room. Viscount Barco furrowed his brows suspiciously upon hearing Roman's claim of another reason for his participation. Doubt and tension rose in the eyes of the man now backed into a corner. The harsh truth was unveiled. Anthony Barco had crossed moral boundaries by assaulting Flora Lawrence, the then-fiancée of Roman. The shock caused Flora to be unable to overcome the pain, forcing her to cancel the engagement. Roman allowed no one to refute his words as he coldly questioned, "You say this is also a fabrication?" With a sharp gaze, he asserted that just asking Flora would reveal the truth. Roman's heart was filled with rage. Trapped by Anthony's lies, he realized the only way to respond was to use the same tactic against him, exposing the truth to turn the tables. With a firm, clenched fist, Roman affirmed that his reason for joining this war was not only for the honor of the Dmitri family, but also for justice for Flora Lawrence, who had been wronged without anyone daring to defend her. With unstoppable momentum, Roman stepped forward amid the conference, questioning both Viscount Barco and all nobles present. His words were like a sharp blade, demanding a frank answer. "Do you really think I have no reason?" Wavering glances and whispers spread throughout the conference. Roman had used the truth itself to tear apart Barco's arguments while building an irrefutable case for his actions. Driven into a corner, Viscount Barco finally realized he could no longer rebut. He knew that arguing would only worsen his position. The only thing left was to buy time. Forcing himself to stay calm, Viscount Barco slumped into his chair. Inside, he tried to calculate new ways to escape. Outwardly, he excused himself by saying the truth cannot yet be verified, and declared the dialogue temporarily ended. At the very moment Barco tried to find a way out, a cold voice rang out. Someone called his name directly, Viscount Barco, marking the beginning of the next turning point in the unfinished trial of justice. Roman Dmitri stood upright in the room, imposing an unavoidable choice. His calm but resolute voice was like a verdict, forcing the entire council to face reality. Either punish Anthony Barco or bear the heavy political consequences from House Dmitri. Roman's eyes flashed with restrained anger, shining directly at his opponent like a sharp blade. The choice posed was not only justice for himself, but also a test of honor for the entire Barco family. Not giving his opponent a chance to evade, Roman continued to increase the pressure. His resolute words served as a guiding principle for what would happen. If the council did not immediately make a decision, then Roman's father, Lord Dmitri, would be the one to receive the report of everything that had occurred. Panic surged within Viscount Barco. His face turned pale, fully aware that a war with Dmitri was unacceptable. Under tremendous pressure, he uttered in despair, realizing he was being cornered. The image of Barco appeared in Roman's imagination amidst a sea of fire, a brutal vision if he pushed matters to the limit. Severing ties with Dmitri would mean not only political defeat, but also the destruction of his entire family. Clenching his hands tightly on the armrest, Viscount Barco tried to maintain a tough exterior, but his resentment and helplessness were evident. The insults in his mind toward Roman were merely a way to reassure himself against the overwhelming pressure crushing his reason. Driven to the extreme, Viscount Barco made a concession. In the name of a lord, he declared he would force Anthony to kneel and apologize before Roman, a humiliating act to save the remainder of the family. But Barco's promise was quickly rejected. Roman cut in with a cold tone, affirming that he never wanted Anthony to kneel before him. For Roman, what he sought was not fake submission but justice. Viscount Barco was stunned, unable to understand Roman's intention. His reaction betrayed fear as he realized all the moves were beyond his control, cornered by a young man full of courage and strategy. Roman concluded with an ultimatum. In this world, the perpetrator has no right to decide their own punishment. Roman would choose the form of punishment, not for personal satisfaction, but for the principles of justice and Dmitri's honor. Amid the gloomy and heavy atmosphere in the great hall, a desperate shout came from behind the closed door, Anthony Barco calling his father in panic. A belated plea from the culprit facing inevitable punishment. Viscount Barco sighed wearily, his eyes heavy with pain and helplessness. He uttered an apology not out of regret for his son's crimes, but because he had no other choice to protect the family on the brink of destruction. Anthony, kneeling before his father, sobbed uncontrollably upon hearing of the upcoming punishment, a duel to determine justice. He could not accept that his fate would be placed in the hands of a stranger, Roman Dmitri, whom he had once tried to harm with slander. Tears of humiliation streamed down Anthony's face as he desperately begged for mercy. He knew well, once entering that fateful duel, his life would no longer be under his own control. The culprit of the past was now a repentant, weak man begging his father to abandon the decision. Viscount Barco's anger exploded like thunder striking his son. He shouted, slapping down on Anthony's weakness. As the eldest son of House Barco, he had no right to tremble or beg for forgiveness, especially when the family's honor hung by a fragile thread. Viscount Barco coldly wiped away a weak tear. He declared, inheriting the family meant being ready to sacrifice everything to protect it. In the morning light shining through the window frame, Anthony was forced to accept the harsh truth. His life no longer belonged to himself. Lord Barco's face became fierce like a demon. He ordered Anthony to face reality, that he would bear the consequences of his sins. The price for the humiliation Roman endured would not be mere empty apologies. He must prepare himself, at least to lose an arm. The father and son stood facing each other in suffocating silence. Then Viscount Barco turned and walked away. His steps were heavy but resolute, leaving Anthony kneeling in despair. That coldness was like sealing a death sentence without the need for a verdict. Cold footsteps echoed through the vast hall. Each step Viscount Barco took was a step deeper into darkness for Anthony. Now, the once arrogant and fierce man was nothing but a fallen figure facing the harsh truth that no one stood by his side anymore. Anthony cried out in despair, his eyes filled with tears begging the father who once protected him. But behind him, Roman Dmitri silently watched with a cold smile. The trial of justice was about to begin, and Anthony, the one who once caused suffering, now had to prepare to receive punishment from the very hands of the man he had tried to harm.